Part 13. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, She is Soft and Sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 121. Chapter 121. Now that you're here, don't leave. As soon as they heard that Yubao was going to catch them, the ghosts who had gathered at the door to watch the excitement dispersed with a coax. I didn't expect this little human girl to be so courageous. Not only was she not afraid of them, she actually wanted to catch them and question them. However, they did not leave immediately, they just stayed away. Yubao did not make things difficult for them, but released the ghost that wanted to tease Xiesui earlier. That was a young male ghost, probably only 20 years old. As soon as Yubao released him, he wanted to escape. Yubao casually threw out a piece of talisman paper, which flew straight to the male ghost's back. The latter was immediately frozen in place and unable to move. When other ghosts saw this, they all showed frightened expressions. This little human girl seems to be more powerful than they imagined. Yubao opened his little hand, and a peachwood sword appeared out of thin air. Yubao stepped forward with the peachwood sword and circled around the male ghost. Although she was short, her aura was 2.8 meters tall. She patted the opponent's shoulder with the peachwood sword in her hand and said, "Let me ask you, why do you ghosts stay here and don't reincarnate?" The male ghost snorted coldly and refused to answer her. He will not give in to this human brat. Yubao wasn't angry at all, but took out the paper figurine, which he rubbed affectionately on her face. The unpleasant smell was obvious. Then he flew towards the male ghost. Soon I heard the male ghost begging for mercy, "Ha ha ha, it's so itchy, ha ha, ha ha ha, master, please forgive me." Finally, the male ghost became honest and answered obediently, "It's not that we don't want to, it's that we can't leave here." It turned out that the explosion killed hundreds of workers, but in order to avoid being held accountable, only a few were reported. The factory director was the brother-in-law of a certain leader at the time, so the matter was suppressed. As for the family members of the deceased, each of them received a generous compensation and signed a confidentiality agreement, and the collective helped to hide it. It's just that we can't hold funerals, and we can't announce the death to the public. Because these people died unexpectedly, the heat generated by the explosion was enough to destroy everything, and no bones were left. Therefore, these talented people have all turned into nameless ghosts and cannot be reincarnated, and they are all trapped here. At the time, a certain leader was good at business and was rising up in the officialdom. He was afraid that the incident of so many people dying would be exposed, so he kept secretly exerting pressure to prevent the land from being sold. However, now that the other party has retired for many years, his reputation and connections are not as good as before, so this land can be put up for bidding. I don't know who the leader was at the time. And the director of this factory, who killed so many lives, yet it was so abhorrent that it was concealed like this, Xiesui said angrily. When Yubao released the male ghost just now, he put a talisman on him and Lusu. At this moment, the two of them could see the male ghost and hear the male ghost's words. More than 100 people died, which shows how tragic the house was. But these people were still trapped here after death, which made people angry. Lusu is calmer than the other person. Although the original bombing was indeed tragic and these people died unjustly, their families did not say anything. As outsiders, no matter how indignant they were, they had no right to say anything. 30 years ago, being able to work in a factory was considered a very respectable job. The main labor force in the family is expected to die, and the compensation given by the other party must have been quite large in order for everyone to choose to hide it. When a loved one dies unexpectedly, it is impossible for a family member not to be heartbroken. But the dead are dead, and the living must continue to live. It cannot be said that it was wrong for them to choose to help hide it together after receiving the compensation money. After all, even if the truth is revealed, the dead person will not be able to survive. It is better to take the money and make other people in the family live a better life. In the past few years, Yubao has seen many ghosts, including those who starved to death, drowned, committed suicide, and were killed by others. Every ghost has its own story. Yubao has heard a lot, but it turns out that not much emotion either. But he expressed his willingness to send them to reincarnation. The ghosts hesitated for a while, and they all expressed their intention, but no one dared to step forward. The original accident was indeed an accident, and the family members were compensated. Even the resentment they had in their hearts has dissipated after so many years. Now that there is an opportunity to reincarnate, the ghosts are naturally unwilling to do so. I just heard that some cultivators secretly catch ghosts to practice. They couldn't be sure whether the little human girl in front of them really wanted to help them. In the end, the male ghost who teased Siesui spoke first. I am willing to reincarnate. He has been trapped here for 30 years and has long wanted to leave. Now that it finally has a chance, even if it may be cheated, it wants to give it a try. I am willing to. Another ghost came running over. More and more ghosts express their willingness to be reincarnated. There are too many ghosts here, and Yubao cannot take them all away, so he plans to open the ghost gate directly and recruit ghost messengers to take them away. 5 thunder orders are sent out, and the gate opens wide. Looking at the ghost missions that appeared out of thin air, the ghosts finally believed that Yubao was really going to send them to reincarnation, and they crowded forward one after another. After finally sending the last ghost away, Yubao put away the peachwood sword and said, I'm exhausted, baby, let's leave here first. This was the first time Siesui saw so many ghosts. He was greatly shocked in his heart. He finally managed to calm down and said, these ghosts have been sent away. Does that mean there is no problem with this land? He was still worried. Following the mission assigned to him by his father. No, you forgot what I just said, there is a very powerful ghost here, and it hasn't appeared yet. Yubao looked at the direction of the thickest black fog in the factory, his face serious. She has just sent away hundreds of ghosts. Logically, the yin qi here should weaken, but the fact is that the yin qi here has not weakened, but has become heavier, which means that the big ghost is likely to be promoted. General ghosts cannot move too far away from the place where they had an accident, but every time they are promoted, as their ghost power increases, their range of activities will also expand. Of course, this means that the other party is more difficult to deal with. She just saved so many ghosts and used up most of her spiritual energy. She may not be able to match this big ghost in a short time. Yubao's original intention was not to provoke the other party. At least not now. Lu Su also saw that she was very tired, so he opened the car door and said, let's go back first. After all, something happened here, and there's no guarantee that it won't be exposed one day. I think your family can invest in another piece of land. Siesui thinks it makes sense. Just as I was about to get in the car, I heard an eerie voice, now that you're here, don't leave. Yubao's expression changed, and he hurriedly urged the two of them, get in the car quickly and get out of here. End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 122. Chapter 122. I still can't protect her after all. Siesui and Lu Su were both startled by the voice and had goosebumps all over their bodies. After hearing Yubao's words, they even wanted to use their hands and feet to get into the car quickly, and at the same time told the driver to drive quickly. But it was still a step too late. Before the car started, I saw a huge black fog blocking the front of the car. Yubao immediately opened the car door and prepared to get out of the driveway. I'll stop it. You guys get out of here first. Lu Su grabbed her wrist. No, we have to go together. Yubao turned around, smiled at him and said, don't worry, brother, Yubao will be fine. Lu Su, then we will stay with you. No, You will only become a burden to me if you stay. These are the fierce ghosts who are about to be promoted. They can kill them with just a wave of their hands. She can't let them stay here and take risks. Lu Su pursed his lips, his face looking uglier than ever. It turned out that no matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't protect her. Can't even help her. The hand holding her wrist finally let go and said, "Okay, let's go first, but you promise me, you must be careful. If you can't fight, run away, don't hold on." Siesui also nodded wildly at the side. Yes, yes, our family doesn't want this land anymore. Don't take any risks. If something happens to help their family look at the land, Lu Su is probably the first. A person will not let himself go. After Yubeo got out of the car, he threw out a teleportation charm and the car was instantly moved 1 kilometer away. Since the teleportation talisman could not guarantee the destination, Yubeo did not dare to let the car move too far for fear of landing in some dangerous place. There is wasteland within a kilometer radius, so there is no need to worry. Furthermore, this distance was enough for her to stop the ghosts and buy them time to leave. In the car, Siesui watched in surprise as the car suddenly appeared in a strange place. He opened his eyes in surprise and said, "Hey, this is the legendary teleportation talisman? Since Sister Yubeo has the teleportation talisman, why don't you follow us, leave together?" Lu Su's eyes were heavy. Maybe he's afraid that the other party will catch up. This is one reason. On the other hand, Yubeo also wants to see how powerful this ghost is. Lu Su, on the other hand, felt a little relieved after seeing the hand Yubao had just revealed. If he couldn't deal with it, it would be no problem to escape if he wanted to. "Let's get out of here first," he said. "You cannot help the other party, or at least you cannot be a drag on the other party." The driver was already frightened to the point of weakness by the scene just now, although he didn't see the ghosts in the factory and didn't know what kind of ghosts they were. But as the driver of the Xie family, I often heard from my young master that the little girl from the Lu family could catch ghosts. The reactions of the three people just now also proved that there was a ghost in this place. Coupled with the sudden teleportation of the car to another place, everyone will be frightened. Fortunately, the driver's psychological quality was quite good. He was afraid, so he quickly calmed down, restarted the car, and left the place quickly. On the other side, Yubeo looked at the ghost in front of him, with a rare expression of worry on the little bun's face. In the past, I only captured ordinary little ghosts. Occasionally I encountered one or two big ghosts, but they were not as powerful as the powerful ghosts in front of me. What should I do if I feel like I can't beat you? System, here we recommend that you purchase the 4th grade Spirit Gathering Pill, which can instantly strengthen your spiritual power and increase your combat effectiveness by 50%. The time is limited to 2 hours. It is safe and has no side effects. Yubeo, although I was a little tempted, I gave up the idea as soon as I thought about the number of points that needed to be redeemed. How about running away? But wouldn't it be too cowardly? And while she was having a fierce ideological struggle, the ghost in front of her said, "Little girl, are you the one who sent them all away?" He just felt the ghost's breath, and also felt the ghost living here. All the children were gone, so he knew that someone from the Suanman must have appeared, but the little girl in front of him was very different from the Suanman in his impression, and she was a little too young. Yubao nodded and said in a sweet voice, "Yes. It's me, I'm very powerful. Uncle Ghost, if you want to be reincarnated, I can help you." "Reincarnation? No, I won't reincarnate. I haven't found my enemy yet, and I haven't taken revenge yet." "Yes, revenge, I want revenge." Over the years, it has been practicing continuously, just to find its original enemy and take revenge. But 30 years have passed, and your enemy may have died long ago. The reason why Yubeo knew that the other party died 30 years ago was because he, like other ghosts, was still wearing the uniform of a chemical factory. Just don't know who the enemy is in the other party's mouth? Is it the original director of the factory, or the person who caused the burning house and the explosion? What are you talking about? No, it's impossible. The fierce ghost in front of him suddenly became violent, his face was ferocious, and bursts of anger flashed in his scarlet eyes. Go to hell, I want you all to die. With that, he opened his hands and rushed towards Yu Bao. Yu Bao quickly took out a handful of talismans and threw them at it. The talismans flew towards the opponent like lightning. Bang dash, the talisman fell on Li Gui, making a burst of explosions, and the fire quickly enveloped the opponent. However, it did not cause any substantial harm to it. On the contrary, those flames completely angered the other party, and they rushed towards Yu Bao again, wrapped in the dark wind. Yu Bao formed a seal while retreating, and then Li Gui moved faster than she imagined. Before the seal was formed successfully, Li Gui had already arrived. Yu Bao could only give up the seal and took out the peachwood sword to resist. The peachwood sword and the ghost claw collided, making a sound of gold and iron. This fierce ghost was many times more powerful than the ones she had dealt with before. It had reached the peak of the fierce ghost realm. The Daomu sword could not block the opponent at all, and Yu Bao was forced to retreat. Li Gui looked at her, letting out a GG laugh, and swung his sharp ghost claws at her again. Yu Bao injected the remaining spiritual power into the peachwood sword. The peachwood sword and the ghost claw collided again, and sparks flew everywhere. Although they were able to withstand the opponent's attack for the time being, due to the huge difference in cultivation between the two, they were struck in the chest by a ghost claw during their third confrontation. Yu Bao felt a tightness in his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. Before she could stand firm, the ghost claws clawed at her neck again. In desperation, Yu Bao once again took out a handful of talismans and threw them at her, while covering his eyes and shouting, "Xiajin, help me!" Only a shrill ghostly cry was heard. Yu Bao was stunned for a moment, then slowly removed the fingers covering his face, and saw that Li Gui's figure seemed to be fixed on something. The ferocious face was very close, and his fingers were less than 1 centimeter away from her neck. Is roaring angrily. Hey, are her talismans so powerful? Ha, Yu Bao couldn't help but be happy. He picked up the peachwood sword and slapped the opponent's forehead hard. Aren't you very powerful? Why don't you continue? Come on, come and catch me. In the darkness, a figure looked at the naughty and cute look of the girl, and couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth slightly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 123. Chapter 123. No snowflake is innocent in an avalanche. In the darkness, a figure looked at the girl's recovery and quirky look, and couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth slightly. Young master, aren't you going over? Behind him, a man in a black cloak asked. The young man glanced in Yu Bao's direction and said, no need, she should be able to handle it on her own. Li Gui was restrained and unable to move. After knowing that he could not harm the little human girl in front of him, he slowly calmed down. Yu Bao looked at the Li Gui in front of him. He was 1.8 meters tall and was wearing a uniform from a chemical factory 30 years ago. He was only in his 20s. If he looked carefully, he had pretty handsome features, with the air of an intellectual. I don't know how such a person could become a vicious ghost. Have you seen enough? Finally, Li Gui spoke, with a sinister voice. The other party made a sudden noise, which startled Yu Bao, and he took a step back almost subconsciously. Then he remembered that the other party couldn't move, so he boldly stepped forward and said, "You evil ghost, why did you hurt people?" Hearing this, Li Gui said GG and laughed strangely. You also said that I am an evil ghost. Isn't it normal for evil ghosts to hurt people? Yu Bao had a sullen face and was too lazy to reason with the ghost. He looked at the other person and said, "You don't look like you were born evil. All the other ghosts have gone to reincarnation. How about I send you to be reincarnated as well?" "Li Gui, how can I be reincarnated if I haven't avenged my great revenge?" "Yo Bao, you mean the burning house? I know that you died unexpectedly and you are unwilling to do so, but you shouldn't harm innocent people." "Innocent," Li Gui sneered, "aren't the people who died in that fire innocent? He only harmed those who chose to hide the truth for money." It turns out that Li Gui was a technician at this chemical plant. After graduating from university, he was assigned to work as a technician in this chemical plant, responsible for production process technology and equipment safety management. He was supposed to have a promising future, but he was killed in an explosion and burned. Before the accident, he had repeatedly mentioned that there were safety hazards in the factory and hoped that rectification could be made. But it was perfunctory every time. At the time of the incident, he was inspecting near the explosion point and was about to respond to the factory director again, when the accident happened. This accident could have been avoided, but it was because of the negligence of the management personnel that so many innocent lives were lost. However, after the incident, the factory leader directly put the blame on him, claiming that it was his negligence as a technician that caused the house fire and caused the accident. There was only one widowed mother in his family, and she managed to support him until he graduated from college. Before her son could marry and have children, news of his unexpected death came, and the old lady fell ill in a hurry. "I also heard that it was because of my son that the accident happened." Some of the victims' family members even came to the house crying and smashing things up. The old lady was able to raise her son by herself, so she was a strong-willed person. In anger, he died directly. The widowed mother passed away and there was no one to help with the funeral arrangements. In the end, the nearby neighbors couldn't stand it and helped to restrain it. The other party had a miserable life and ended up like this in his later years because he was an unfilial son. Speaking of this, Li Gui's eyes shed 2 lines of tears. After Yubeo listened to it, even if he was young and had heard too many ghost stories, he would still be angry. The little fat man clenched his hands into fists. "These people are simply disgusting. At first I thought it was just a simple accident, but I didn't expect it to be anything other than that. Those people simply killed people intentionally." He concealed the truth afterwards and even killed other innocent people for it. "These people must be punished by law." Over the years, relatives of deceased workers would occasionally come to pay their respects secretly, and the evil spirits would take the opportunity to entangle them in order to absorb the yang energy from their bodies in order to strengthen themselves. Normal people who lose yang qi will become weak and sick, or even die unexpectedly. That's why Li Gui was so violent, because he was burdened with several lives. Although Yubeo sympathizes with him. But it is definitely wrong for the other party to harm others. "Yo Bao, how about we make a deal? Don't you want revenge? I can help you resolve the cause and effect, and then you can reincarnate yourself. Are you really willing to help me?" Li Gui glanced at her, but what could her little arms and legs do? Yubeo promised seriously, "I will investigate the truth of that year and restore your innocence." It's just that so many years have passed, and Yubeo is not sure whether the people involved in the case are still alive. Li Gui didn't trust her ability, but he was controlled by others now. Since he couldn't escape for the time being, he might as well give in and find a chance to leave later. He couldn't help but nodded and said, "Okay, I believe you." Yubeo didn't help him unlock the restrictions in his body because she didn't know which talisman trapped him. And she also knew in her heart that once Li Gui regained his freedom, she was no match for him, and she might not have a chance to trap him again. She didn't dare to take risks, so she directly took Li Gui into the system and gave it to Xiao Jin's care. "Let's go." When the young man saw this, he turned around with confidence. The man in black robe behind him looked in the direction of Yu Bao. The young master can come all the way to rescue her, which shows that the little girl's status in the young master's mind is very extraordinary. It seems that he needs to remind his friends to be more polite if they see this little girl in the future, so as not to accidentally bump into each other and make the young master unhappy. After Yu Bao subdued the ghost, he called Lu Su and asked someone to come back to pick her up. Lu Su received a call from his sister and was instantly relieved to know that he was okay, and hurriedly urged the driver to turn around. In fact, they didn't leave too far and returned soon after receiving the call. Before the car stopped, Lu Su jumped out of the car, grabbed her and checked her up and down and said, "Are you okay?" Then he caught a glimpse of the blood on her clothes, and his expression changed instantly and said, "You are injured." Yu Bao couldn't help but feel guilty flashing across his face. Oops, he must have accidentally got it on his clothes when he vomited blood just now. His big eyes rolled around, and little Baizai pretended to be calm. "No, this is not my blood." "Really?" Lu Su looked at her suspiciously. "Of course it's true. Look, am I fine?" Nothing happened. Yu Bao spun around in front of him, looking like nothing was wrong. Siesui stuck his head out of the rear window of the car, looked in the direction of the abandoned factory and said, "Sister Yu Bao, have you subdued the evil ghost?" "That's right, I'm amazing." Yu Bao patted his chest proudly, but accidentally patted the place where he was injured by the ghost claw, and his little face suddenly wrinkled. Lu Su saw her reaction and pulled her into the driveway with a straight face. "Go to the hospital." End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, She is Soft and Sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 124. Chapter 124 Gentleness Beyond Age. At the entrance of the hospital, Yu Bao met Gu Zingzi, who was about to be discharged. "Wake up, are you discharged from the hospital?" "Yes, are you here to pick me up?" "I." "Come with me." Before Yu Bao could say anything, Lu Su pulled him inside. "I'll go home and play with you later." Yu Bao could only turn his head and wave to Gu Zingzi. "Why did I seem to hear Yu Bao's voice just now?" Ning Sheng, who had just completed the discharge procedures, came over and said. Gu Zingzi thought of the scene he saw when he arrived, his brows furrowed slightly, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. "That girl is injured?" "Mom, I'll go take a look, wait for me." After Gu Zingzi said that, he ran in the direction of Yu Bao. Ning Sheng looked at him. This kid can't speak clearly. It was rare to see that boy paying attention to anything. Could it be that the voice he heard just now was really Yu Bao? After the examination, the doctor took off his mask and revealed Brother Lu's familiar face. "Everything is normal, nothing serious." "How could it be? This girl is obviously injured." Lu Su looked in the direction of Yu Bao suspiciously. Could it be that the girl persuaded her second brother to help her hide it? Brother Lu knew what he was thinking as soon as he saw his expression, and said with a smile, "You don't even believe in my medical skills. If she is really injured, I will definitely be the first to treat her. Can I hide it from you?" Lu Su thought it made sense. The second brother might help hide other things, but the matter of Yu Bao's injury should not be the case. "Look, I just said I'm fine." "But you just..." She clearly looked injured, and the blood stains on her body couldn't appear out of thin air. "I was just teasing you." Yu Bao stuck out his tongue. On the way here just now, she secretly took a third-grade Peyuan pill. Thinking of the missing points made her heart ache. However, fortunately, the internal injuries left by Li Gui were more than half healed, otherwise she really couldn't hide it from everyone. "There is indeed nothing wrong. If you are worried, I can help you find another doctor to check again," Brother Lu said. Lu Su, "No, I believe in the second brother's medical skills. If something happened to Yu Bao, the second brother would not be able to explain it to his family." Coming out of Brother Lu's office, Yu Bao saw Gu Zingzi standing at the door. The latter said seriously with a small face, "Are you injured?" "No, It's my brother who doesn't trust me and must bring me for a checkup. Yubao was now able to confidently pass the blame to his own brother. Seeing that her face looked fine, Gu Zingzi used his spiritual sense to check her body again. Seeing that there was indeed nothing wrong with her body, he felt relieved and said, "Let's go home together." Yubao nodded, holding hands with the other person and walking outside. Lu Su glanced at the brat next door, a hint of displeasure flashed in his eyes. The old man Gu next door has always been interested in his family's Yubao, and wants Yubao to be his granddaughter-in-law. Everyone in the whole community knows that, and as a sister-in-law, Lu Su naturally cannot be unaware of this. In Lu Su's opinion, although the brat next door looks good and has a good family background, he is still not good enough for his sister. Can the other party, with her small arms and legs, protect her sister? Not to mention that his sister is still young, so why should she marry her as a baby? Because of Mr. Gu's behavior, Lu Su looked at Gu Zingzi in a somewhat annoying way, just like looking at a pig that was ready to eat their baby cabbage at any time, with defensive eyes. He walked up directly, took Yubao's other hand, and said to her seriously, "Men and women are not close to each other. You have grown up, so you should keep an appropriate distance from all boys." After saying that, he glanced at her. She held hands with Gu Zingzi and said, "For things like holding hands with boys, you have to be careful in the future. If you want to hold hands, you can only hold hands with your brother, do you understand?" Yobao blinked his eyes and said, "But my brother is also a boy." Lu Su glared at her and said, "I'm your brother, of course it's different." This girl actually compared him with others. The two of them had lived together in the most expensive house in the world. Is that something ordinary people can compare to? Yobao turned his head and glanced in the direction of Gu Zingzi, but Xing is different too. What's different about him? Is it that he has more hands or more eyes than others? At most, he looks better than others, so what's the use? Lu Su was very dissatisfied with this girl for putting others in the same position as him. The boy named Gu is just an outsider, how can he compare with me? Yobao, it's just different anyway. She couldn't tell exactly what was different, but since we grew up together, Yobao felt that the other person was different. Gu Zingzi smiled when he heard this, and a trace of tenderness that was inconsistent with his age flashed in his eyes. Lu Su was off by the bratty girl. Just when he was about to teach him the difference between his own brother and the wild men outside, he heard the little girl's soft little voice saying again, "But no one is as important as my brother. Brother is you, the dearest and dearest person." Lu Su was instantly flattered. Since this girl still has some conscience, it is not in vain that he is so kind to her. On the way home from the hospital, Yubao received a reward for helping the more than 100 ghosts to be saved, but the total was only a little more than the points for the pill she bought. Then remove the spiritual energy consumed by her and the cost of salvation. Overall, it's still a loss. The only thing she hopes now is that after sending the fierce ghost to be reincarnated, the reward will be greater. However, if you want to send that fierce ghost to reincarnation, you must first eliminate his karma in this world and fulfill his wish in the human world, which is to find out the person responsible for the original accident and find out the truth. But after all, 30 years have passed since the incident, so it may not be that easy to investigate. After returning home, Yubao summoned Li Gui again and wanted to ask him more about the original explosion. Just as soon as he released the opponent, he felt a powerful ghost force coming towards him. But before it could reach him, it was bounced back by an invisible force. "What did you do to me?" Li Gui's expression was ferocious. "Yubao, I placed a contract spell on you. Now that the contract has been completed, if you have any intention of hurting me or harming me, you will suffer backlash. Similarly, if I don't do what I say, I will suffer the same consequences." Punishment. She is not stupid. If she is not completely sure, how can she dare to release the evil spirit? If the other party changes his mind, wouldn't she be looking for death? Facts have also proven that you really can't believe lies. Dong dong dong. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. One person and one ghost looked towards the door at the same time. I saw Gu Zingzi's figure appearing at the door of Yubeo's room. As soon as the young man's figure appeared, Li Gui seemed to have suddenly discovered something terrible, and his body couldn't help but tremble slightly. End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 125. Chapter 125. Do you two have a secret behind my back? Gu Zingzi glanced over with a light look, and the latter immediately straightened his body. Yubeo looked at Li Gui, who suddenly became more honest, and then looked suspiciously at Gu Zingzi, who was looking at the door, but the latter had already retracted his gaze, as if nothing had happened. Yubao felt that he must have thought too much. How could this fierce ghost be afraid of Xing Xing? Xing Xing is just an ordinary person. At most, his luck is better than others. Yes, after the formation was broken, Yubao discovered that there was a strange and powerful destiny in the other party, which even she could not see through. Tusk, if that formation wasn't so powerful, it would be able to suppress even such a powerful luck. I'm here to give you a cake. Gu Zingzi pretended not to see the ghost in the room, took out a box from behind and walked towards Yubeo. Yubeo thought it was made by Ning Sheng at first, but when she saw the box, she realized, hey, isn't this the cake from the little fat man's house? It was still her favorite, but at this time, it should have been sold out, right? Gu Zingzi, I asked Suyu and his mother to help make this just now. Don't you like to eat it? Suyu is the little fat guy who plays football with them. Yubao looked at him in surprise with wide eyes. Is this really the Xing Xing he knew? He actually took the initiative to buy her a cake. Gee, this is too surprising, right? What are you looking at? Don't want to eat? I'll take it away. Gu Zingzi gestured to walk out. Yubao immediately rushed forward, hugged the other person and said, no, you are not allowed to leave. Who said I don't want to eat? The soft body fell into his arms, and the young man couldn't help but show a hint of endearment on his fair face, but he said with disgust, stand still, you are a girl, and you just throw yourself at a boy. How can I buy you with a piece of cake? Yubeo stood obediently, not forgetting to make faces at him. What a boy, you are obviously still a child. The two grew up together. In Yubeo, the difference between men and women is not particularly strong. Gu Zingzi handed her the cake in his hand, and Yubao immediately opened it eagerly. Wow, it looks delicious. You should take a bite. Yubeo took a big spoonful and handed it to Gu Zingzi's mouth. Gu Zingzi shook his head and said, I don't eat sweets, you can eat it yourself. Okay, Yubeo took back the spoon with a look of pity, and then stuffed it into his mouth with a ouch. Wow, it's delicious. Yubao ate with a satisfied expression, while Gu Zingzi looked at her lovingly the whole time. Both of them seemed to have forgotten that there was a ghost in the room, watching them the whole time. When Yubeo finished eating, Gu Zingzi took the initiative to pick up a tissue and help her wipe the cream off her mouth and said, is it that delicious? Of course, Yubeo nodded without hesitation, otherwise he wouldn't have thought of introducing the little fat man to Xing Xing, and eating sweets can make people feel better. Are you in a bad mood? Gu Zingzi stared at her eyes subconsciously and asked. Yubeo's little face visibly collapsed, and he immediately told him about the abandoned factory. More than 100 lives were lost, and I don't know if those who chose to hide it could sleep well at night or have nightmares. After hearing this, Gu Zingzi was silent for a moment and comforted her, the world is fair, and bad guys will definitely receive the punishment they deserve. Yubao nodded, then looked at him and said, why did you think of buying me a cake? Gu Zingzi, I heard that you saved me, and the cake is a thank you gift. Huh, that's it? 5 million points are exchanged for a piece of cake. How do you feel that you are at a disadvantage? What's wrong, didn't she enjoy eating just now? Gu Xingzi glanced at her expression and said, "Do you think it's too insincere to say thank you with a cake?" Yobeo nodded vigorously, and was about to say that he should at least invite a few more cakes. Gu Xingzi seemed to be thinking about it and said, "I heard people say that the grace of saving one's life should be given with one's own body. You saved me." Yobao's eyes widened immediately and he said, "You want to marry me? That doesn't have to be the case. Gu Xingzi, what I mean is that you saved my life. If you have any problems in the future, you can come to me and I will help you solve it together." Oh, Yobao's face was sullen. It turned out that she was overthinking. She thought Xing wanted to marry her. Gu Xingzi saw her reaction in his eyes and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. "It is impossible to get married, but it is possible to get married, but this girl is still too young, so there is no rush. Li Gui, he is a single ghost who has never had a girlfriend until his death. Is it appropriate to show him this?" Yubeo learned about the original situation from Li Gui's mouth. On the other hand, Lu Su and Xiesui also found someone to investigate the original firehouse. However, after all, 30 years had passed and it took a few days. It took time to finally investigate the matter clearly. The truth of the matter is indeed as Li Gui said. It's just that the factory director died many years ago, probably because he was burdened with too many lives. A few years after the fire, he fell seriously ill and passed away. That leader is still alive today, but has been retired for many years and now lives in a high-end private nursing home in Yunjing. Yubeo did a fortune-telling for him and found that the other person's life was approaching and his life was not long. Many of the family members of the people who were involved in the accident have moved away, and they are unwilling to talk more about what happened back then. It took them a lot of effort to finally get the confessions from those people. Lu Su handed the things to Yubao without asking her what she planned to do. Although this girl is young, she is very assertive. Sometimes she feels like a sister and he is like a younger brother. With the results of the investigation and the confessions of the family members, Yubeo planned to meet the leader. This was also the request of Li Gui, who wanted to take revenge in person. Since Lu Su and Xiesui had to go to class, Yubao planned to go first. After school, Gu Xingzi did not go to play football with the others. Instead, he looked at Yubao and said, "I'll go with you." These days, Gu Xingzi has been staying with Yubao. He has seen the investigation results, and he can guess some of this girl's thoughts. Yubao looked at him in surprise and said, "Do you know where I'm going?" She seemed to have never told him her plan. "Gu Xingzi, are you planning to meet Song Huaishan?" Song Huaishan was the original leader. Yubao nodded. Gu Xingzi took the skull bag in her hand and said, "Let's go." "Where are you two going? Why don't you take me with you? Also, who is Song Huaishan?" A person suddenly appeared next to him, and he saw Lu Zuan staring at the two of them with a look of resentment on his face and said, "Are you two carrying someone behind your back? Do I have a secret?" End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 126. Chapter 126. Does this girl usually fool him like this? The secret is not really a secret, and there is no use just telling him. "Yo Bao, we heard that there is a cram school for the mathematical Olympiad competition in the city, and we plan to go and check it out with Xing. Do you want to go with us?" Once he heard about the cram school, nephew Lu immediately lost interest. "Isn't it fun to play football and games? Why can't you think of any cram school to attend?" Gu Xingzi couldn't help but glance at Yubeo. Does this girl usually fool him like this? After successfully getting rid of the follower Lu Zuan, the two of them immediately took a taxi to a nursing home in the suburbs. Although it is located in the suburbs, It is very popular among the rich because of its green mountains and green waters, fresh air, and beautiful environment. Many villa areas have been developed in this area. The car passed by these villa areas and finally stopped in front of a nursing home. As the most high-end and luxurious sanatorium in Yunjing, I heard that it not only has the most advanced equipment at home and abroad, but also has experts hired with high salaries from abroad to take care of everyone's physical condition at any time. It costs tens of thousands of yuan to stay here for one night. Of course, the management is also very demanding. It is quite strict. You must make an appointment to enter and get the consent of your family before you can enter. The appointment is without reservation, and it is impossible for family members to agree. Gu Xingzi looked at Yubao and saw that the girl took out 2 talisman papers and pasted one on each of herself and Gu Xingzi, and then walked in through the front door in a swagger. The nursing home is very big, and it took the two of them a lot of effort to find Song Huishan's ward. The invisibility charm also just expired. There is an old man in his 70s living in the ward. He has gray hair, sharp and convex cheekbones, a sharp and fleshless nose, sparse eyebrows, and a narrow hall. From his appearance, you can tell that he is ruthless, greedy, and easily attracted by power. Blindfolded. In his early years, he probably did a lot of unscrupulous things for power. Looking at Yu Bao and Gu Xingzi who suddenly broke in, the old man looked unhappy and said, "Who are you looking for?" After all, the old man was in a high position until his retirement, and he had an aura about him. Ordinary people would probably be intimidated by the aura of the other person, but one of Yu Bao and Gu Xingzi had been pampered since childhood and didn't know what fear was. The other, for the time being, had no one in the world that he could be afraid of. Facing the old man's stern scrutiny, neither of them changed their expressions. Yu Bao walked in with his short legs and said, "Are you Song Huishan? I was entrusted by someone to ask you something." The old man frowned in displeasure. In these years, no one has called him Mr. Song, but this girl actually dared to call him by his first name. "I am Song Huishan, what do you want from me?" Although the old man was displeased, he was also secretly frightened. Who were these two children raised by? They actually had such magnanimity and courage at such a young age. "Yu Bao, we are here to ask you about the fire in the factory 30 years ago." The old man's face changed slightly when he heard this, but he soon calmed down again. Although his face was not very good looking, he said calmly, "What the fire case is, I don't know." Yu Bao figured it out after thinking about it for a moment. I'm afraid the other party had already expected this day when he heard the news that the factory land was going to be auctioned. I don't know if he was frightened day and night during this period, or if he ever regretted concealing so many lives. Yu Bao, it was the fire in the suburban factory 30 years ago. Although it has been a long time, so many people died after all. I heard that the director of the factory was still your brother-in-law. I guess you will not be unimpressed when the old man heard about so many human lives. He suddenly looked at Yu Bao with a cold and sinister gaze and said, "Kid, I don't know what you are talking about, and this is not the place you should come to. Go back and find your adults quickly." Since it was reported that the land was going to be auctioned, Song Huishan had already expected that the case from that year might be exposed, but he did not expect that the two children would be the first to be found. I just don't know whose family sent these two children. Are they political enemies of the Song family, or other families who are eyeing the Song family? What do they want to do? But you plan to use this matter to bring down the Song family? What is the purpose of sending two children? Do you want to test him? Do you think he is more likely to show off his abilities in front of children? Song Huishan had countless thoughts in his mind in an instant, and finally decided to remain unchanged in response to all changes. "Grandpa, are you wondering, who sent us here?" Yu Bao continued in a soft voice. "We are indeed here for someone else. His name is Li Jianan, and he was a technician at the chemical plant back then. and he was the first to discover the factory's problems, but he raised them several times but no one paid attention. "What nonsense are you talking about?" the old man shouted fiercely. He has indeed heard of this name before. He vaguely remembered that he was an employee of that factory. Logically speaking, 30 years had passed and he couldn't remember so clearly some insignificant people. But this Li Jianan was an accident. After the accident, his brother-in-law came to visit him, so he secretly helped suppress the matter and told him that he must resolve the matter as soon as possible. During this period, my brother-in-law mentioned a person, Li Jianan, saying that the other person knew that he had seen a problem. Fortunately, the other party died in the burning house. However, to avoid any accidents, people were sent to visit his home. They found out that his only wife had also passed away, which made him feel relieved. 30 years later, he was frightened when he heard this name again. Karen has died in that fire. How could a dead person come to them for help? Grandpa doesn't believe it. I can ask him to come out and tell you in person, Bao Bao said, and directly released the evil spirit in the space. As soon as Li Gui saw Song Huaishan, his eyes of hatred suddenly turned scarlet, and he stretched out a pair of ghost claws and rushed towards him. "Song Huaishan, accept your life." Song Huaishan felt a sense of gloomy air, and the temperature in the room instantly dropped several degrees. Yu Bao waved his little hand, and Li Gui was locked in place. While struggling, he roared, "Let me go, I will make him pay for it with his life. I didn't bring you here to help you kill people. Don't you want to publicize the other party's evil deeds? If he dies, no one can prove your innocence. What's more, he is already close to his life expectancy. He died like this not long ago. Don't you think it's too advantageous for the other party?" Yu Bao'an said in a clear voice. Song Huaishan couldn't see the ghost, but when he heard Yu Bao's voice, he felt extremely frightened. The next second, I felt a pain in my eyes, and suddenly realized that there was an extra person in the room. No, it was not a person, but a ghost. The man was wearing an old factory uniform and had a three-quarter hairstyle that was popular 30 years ago. It turns out that just now, Yu Bao put a ghost charm on him. End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, She is Soft and Sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 127. Chapter 127. He reached out and held her chin. "Hey, how did you two kids get in?" Suddenly, a voice sounded at the door. I saw a middle-aged woman walking in with two children. He stared at Gu Zingzi and Yu Bao in the room suspiciously and said, "Which family are you children from? Lu Yu, wake up. Why are you here?" Suddenly, the little girl next to the woman said. "Song Si Yu?" Yu Bao looked at Song Si Yu's brother and sister beside the woman, and then at Song Huaishan. Before she could speak, Song Si Yu's voice sounded again, "Why are you in my great-grandfather's ward?" "Grandpa," Yu Bao glanced in the direction of the old man. "Song Huaishan, Song Si Yu. What a coincidence. Yo Bao, we are here to ask Mr. Song for advice. Do you know my great-grandfather?" Song Si Yu looked at them suspiciously. Her great-grandfather is in poor health and has been living in a nursing home since retirement. Even she rarely sees her great-grandfather a few times a year. How did they know their great-grandpa? Yu Bao said, "I didn't know him before, but I came here to visit because of someone's request." "Humph, you lied. Who would ask a child from you?" "You, don't talk like that." Song Si Yu next to her pushed her. Song Si Yu turned around and glared at him. "Brother, you will help her. Who is your sister?" "Okay Yu, since you know these two children, please send them out for your great-grandfather," Song Huaishan suddenly said. Before they came in, Song Huaishan had already seen the evil ghost. After knowing that the other person was Li Jianan and that more than 100 ghosts were trapped in the abandoned factory, the old man's energy suddenly dropped. At first he was still denying it in front of Yubao and the others, but as soon as Li Kainan appeared, he was like a duck being held up by the neck, unable to say a word. After seeing the ghost just now, the old man's face became very bad, and the death aura on his body became even heavier. If he hadn't been stopped by Yubao, Li Gui would have killed him on the spot. All that needs to be said has just been said. Although Song Huaishan did not admit it personally, his reaction said everything. Yubao gave the other party two choices. One was to announce the original incident and find someone to thoroughly investigate the truth about the fire. It's just a matter of pulling out the carrot and bringing out the mud. In this way, all the things he has done will probably be found out. Secondly, he will plead guilty and explain clearly his original crime. I believe that the other party will make a decision after they leave. Yubao gave the other party 3 days, but when he was at school the next day, Song Siyu suddenly appeared out of nowhere and impulsively said in front of Yubao, "It was you who killed my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather he died suddenly after meeting you. What did you do to my great-grandfather?" It turned out that after the two of them left, the old man left a confession and was found dead in the room in the early morning. The cause of death was cardiac paralysis. The other party has acquired heart disease and needs to take medicine every day. It should be caused by the other party deliberately stopping the heart treatment medicine and taking other inducing medicines. In fact, it is equivalent to suicide. Yubao glanced at Gu Xingzi, and they were not surprised by the result. Gu Xingzi, the death of a person does not mean that things never happened. We just want to announce the truth we have found with the other party's confession. They don't even need to publicize it too much, everyone will know the other party's crime. After finally solving the problem of Li Gui, Yubao started busy refining the elixir. The appearance of Li Gui made her realize her own insufficiency. In order to upgrade in the shortest time, she would only sleep 6 or 7 hours a night at most, and sometimes only 2 or 3 hours. Severe lack of sleep. Always doze off during class. Especially listening to the teacher's voice is like listening to a lullaby. Yubao felt that his eyelids were getting heavier and heavier, so he simply held a book in front of him, hid his little head behind, and dozed openly. She fell asleep unknowingly, and her head suddenly hit the table. She saw a hand reaching out from beside her and holding her chin firmly. Yubao rubbed the other person's hand, then closed his eyes and continued to sleep. The movement between the two attracted the attention of the teacher on the podium. Just as the other party was about to issue a reminder, Gu Xingzi looked towards the other party and said, "Teacher, can you wait until she wakes up to say anything?" The expression on the teacher's face couldn't help but stagnate. This is probably the only one who dares to sleep in class and stops the teacher from waking him up. Anyone else would have been pointed at the nose and told to get out. But the strange thing was that after meeting Gu Xingzi's eyes, the other party surprisingly compromised. It wasn't until after class that they were called to the office together. Yubao was woken up in a daze and walked all the way into the office. The air conditioning in the room blew, and he became more awake. "We just had a math class." The math teacher glared at Yubao and said, "Why did you sleep in class?" Yubao has just woken up, and now he opens his misty eyes and says, "Because I'm sleepy." Math teacher. School is a place to go to school, not a place to sleep. The math teacher's face was not very good, and he glared at her and said, "I know you are smart, but you can't just rely on how smart you are to not listen to the class. Mathematics is a subject that needs to be taken seriously and carefully studied. Just the two of you. How can one learn mathematics well with such an attitude?" Yubao, "But we have learned it all. Did you know that the midterm exam is coming soon?" The other party was about to lecture her in a long way, but suddenly paused and said, "What did you just say?" Yubao blinked and said, "Teacher, we really know everything. If you don't believe me, you can test us." "Okay." The math teacher wanted to teach her a lesson and let her know that it was wrong to be complacent. He directly found a final paper and printed out 2 copies, handed it to them and said, "Didn't you say you know how to do it? I want to see what score you can get. This test paper is very difficult. Not to mention that they have just started studying it this semester, even students in a higher grade may not be able to do it. It takes an average student an hour to complete this test paper, but it only took the 2 of them more than 10 minutes. The speed was so fast that even the teachers in the next class were shocked. They all came over and said, 'Lao Zhang, hurry up and see what the scores of these 2 children are.' The math teacher was also a little surprised. It took him 10 minutes to complete this test paper, but these 2 people actually finished it so quickly. Immediately started grading with a red pen. After grading, I looked at the 200 points on the test paper and fell into silence. When the teachers next to them saw it, they all smiled and said, 'Old Zhang, you have found a treasure. I didn't expect that there are 2 little geniuses in your class. Come on, I have a 4th grade student here. Do you 2 want to take a look at the midterm simulation questions?' End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, She is Soft and Sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 128. Chapter 128. He just wants to be a salted fish. This time it still only took 10 minutes, and the accuracy was still 100%. Even the Chinese teacher came over to join in the fun and said, "Would you 2 do the Chinese paper by the way?" Gu Xingzi and Yuebao looked at each other and shook their heads. They could only do the math problems. There were so many Chinese words and they were too lazy to do them. The Chinese teacher walked away with a look of regret on his face. On the other hand, the 4th grade math teacher looked at the 2 of them with interest and said, "I see the level of you 2, there is no need to continue studying in the 3rd grade. Do you 2 want to skip a grade and come to my class to try? Don't worry, it's not as strict as your teacher Zhang. As long as you learn everything you need to learn, it's okay to sleep in class occasionally." After teaching for so many years, he has encountered smart students, but there are only a few such smart students. Such a good seedling must be cultivated well. When Yuebao and his math teacher heard this, he was immediately unhappy. I said, "Lao Li, you are not being kind. How can you poach someone like this? They are my students." He knew that the 2 of them were smart, and they usually scored 100% in exams. But to be honest, getting 100% in the primary school exam is really nothing. But 2 children can finish the test papers for the next stage or even the next school year ahead of time and get perfect scores in such a short time. This is not just ordinary smartness. The 4th grade math teacher took the initiative to pour a cup of tea and handed it to him. "Old Zhang, you also know that I am planning to set up a competition class. I think the 2 of them are good candidates for learning competitions, and they may be able to bring glory to the school." Woolen cloth. The former hummed, "You don't have to go to your class to study competition." Although he took the water poured by the other party, he was still a little unhappy. Who wouldn't like students with good grades? Don't I want to be their main teacher so that I can more easily guide them? In the end, it's not up to the 2 of them whether they should skip a grade or not. It still depends on the opinions of the children and their parents. The next day, Ning Sheng and Yo-Yo's mother were invited to the school. Once they heard that it was about transferring schools, both of them said they had no objections and would listen to their children. To be honest, it has always been easy for the 2 children to study. Gu Xingzi won't go into details. She spends most of her time reading. As for Yuebao, she is busy and often disappears, but her grades have never fallen behind. She really hasn't. What worries did they have? Besides, families like theirs don't rely on their children to get into a good university and be admired by others. In the worst case, they will go home and inherit the family business. As long as the children are happy, grades are not that important. Of course, it is also something to be happy about when your child gets good grades. This is also the first time for the teachers to see such Buddhist parents. They say all roads lead to Rome, and some people are born in Rome. This is also something that cannot be envied. As for Yu Bao and Gu Xingzi, it doesn't matter to them. They have already finished primary school content, and it doesn't matter which grade they go to. When I heard that the two of them were going to skip a grade, the most excited person was Lu Xuan. You two are going to skip a grade? What should I do? Is he going to be abandoned again? Yo Bao, it's okay, you can come with us. Gu Xingzi, we can help you make up lessons. Yo Bao nodded, yes, we will take turns to help you make up for it. I have calculated that starting from now on, it will only take about 1 month to complete the 3rd grade course. Lu Xuan couldn't help but show a horrified expression. No, 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 he didn't want to skip a grade at all, let alone make up a class. He just wants to be a salty fish and survive until he graduates. Every time he gets an 80% score in an exam, he is already very happy. He has to make up classes to skip a grade. If his grades fail to keep up, he will have to accept the baptism of love from his parents when he comes back. He is very upset. But sister-in-law Lu thinks this is a good idea. With her son's lazy temperament, without the supervision of Yu Bao and Gu Xingzi, he might be able to give her a score of 60 or so one day. It's better to put him with those two and feel at ease. The little nephew Lu was forced to start a miserable career of tutoring. The 4th grade teacher only wanted Lu Yu and Gu Xingzi, because Lu's nephew's grades looked really mediocre. Although it is not particularly bad, it does not meet the standards of top students. And at first glance, he doesn't have the fighting spirit to learn, which doesn't meet his requirements for selecting competition talents. But Lu Yu and Gu Xingzi expressed that the 3 of them wanted to be together. Either skip a grade together or stay in the original class together. The other party had no choice. For the 2 good talents he was interested in, not only did he persuade them with sincerity, but he also had to help nephew Lu organize the review materials for the grade skipping exam. A month later, Lu's nephew was forced to take the 4th grade skipping assessment together, and finally barely passed. The 3 of them came out of the office. Yubao looked at nephew Lu and said, "Anan, we can be in the same class again, are you happy?" Lu Xuan thought that he would have to learn more difficult knowledge in the future and would have to join the competition class with them. Tears had already burst into tears in my heart, but I tried hard to squeeze out a smile on my face and said, "I'm happy." The little ant worked so hard to help him make up lessons, and he couldn't let her down. The happiest person is Li Lin. He is a mathematics teacher in class 1 of grade 4 and the leader of the mathematics teaching and research group. Recently, the city is preparing to hold a mathematics competition. The school leader has given him the task and he is selecting team members. With the participation of Lu Yu and Gu Xingzi, he suddenly felt confident. As for Lu Xuan, that's just a bonus. 1 more of him is not too much, and 1 of less of him is not too much. After the assessment in the morning, the 3 of them went to report to the new class in the afternoon. Li Lin personally took the 3 of them to the classroom. "Everyone, be quiet. There are 3 new students in our class today. They all jumped from the 3rd grade. Although they are younger than you, their grades are much better than yours. Everyone usually learn more from your new classmates. Now, please introduce yourself to the new students." "Hello everyone, my name is Gu Xingzi. Dear Yu. Dear Zuan." Everyone waited for a long time but didn't hear anything more. Even Li Lin couldn't help but turned his head and looked at the 3 of them and said, "Is it gone now?" I have probably never seen such a brief self-introduction, and I was a little overwhelmed for a while. Gu Xingzi vs Yobeo, no more. The dear nephew did have something to say, but in order to maintain the formation, he chose to keep silent for the time being. "Okay," Li Lin randomly pointed to a newly vacated table in the middle of the front row and told Yu Bao and Gu Xing, "That's your 2 seats. He then pointed to an empty seat in the corner and said to Lu Xuan, "Just sit there for now." Little nephew Lu looked at it and saw that it was a bit far away from Yubao and the others' seats. Then he directly dragged a stool and placed it next to the teacher's podium and said, "Teacher, I can just sit here. This seat happens to be right in front of Yubao and Gu Xingzi." Li Lin looked at the three people who were looking at him in unison, and felt that his temples were a little bulging. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 129. Chapter 129. No, you have something to do. Li Lin looked at the three people who were looking at him in unison, and felt that his temples were a little bulging. What should students who want to come in person do? You have to admit that your head hurts. Not only do you have to recognize them, you also have to coax them. Isn't it just an extra table next to the podium? It's just a trivial matter. Okay, if you like to sit here, then sit here. He pointed to the two students behind him and said, "Help him move the table over." "No need, teacher, I can do it myself." After Lu Xuan said that, he ran back, holding the table leg with one hand, and moved the table over easily. Even though he is young, he is very powerful. Everyone. Where does this Popeye come from? He probably didn't grow up eating spinach, right? Li Lin couldn't help but twitch when he saw this scene. Before, he was worried that the three of them were young and might be bullied when they first came to the class. Now it seems that it is the others who need to worry. "Okay, everyone, sit down and get ready for class." Li Lin waved his hand. It was only the first day for these three people to come to class, and he had a feeling that it was not easy to lead the team. "Forget it, I can't think about it, my head hurts if I think about it too much." Yo Bao stared at him for a while and said, "Teacher, have you lost your hair seriously recently?" The latter was stunned for a moment, subconsciously touched the top of his head and said, "Is it already so obvious?" He had indeed been losing a lot of hair after combing his hair in the past few mornings. When Yu Bao asked him this fiercely, he subconsciously became worried about his hair volume. There are a few teachers in the school who have lost their jobs at a young age. He is worried that he will be like them. Yo Bao reminded him seriously with a small face, "You'd better go to the hospital for a checkup." "Thank you Lu Yu for your concern, but the teacher is fine." The school arranges physical examinations for teachers every year, and it has only been 2 months since the last physical examination. There is nothing wrong with his body. It must be because he has been under too much pressure recently in the competition class. "Yubao, no, you have something wrong." Li Lin was startled for a moment, then smiled and said, "Can Lu Yu still see a doctor?" "No," Yu Bao shook his head, "what I'm good at is reading faces. If your seal is black, it means you have committed a crime recently. If your mountain roots are light blue, it means you are sick and your life is in danger. It is best to go there this afternoon. Go to the hospital." Another thing she didn't say was that there were horizontal stripes on Fang's mountain roots, which indicated changes in his marriage. Li Lin couldn't laugh now. Judging from the burning words she said, it couldn't be true, right? Then she felt that she was thinking too much. How old was she? How could a child understand this? He couldn't help but smile and said, "Okay, the teacher knows, let's go to class first." Yubao knew from one look at his attitude that the other party didn't take her words to heart. She didn't want to change teachers just after skipping a grade, so she secretly took a talisman and stuck it on him while the other person wasn't paying attention. Li Lin was about to go back to the office after class, when his vision suddenly went dark. Fortunately, he was holding the podium with his hands so he didn't fall. "Teacher, are you okay?" Yubao stepped forward and asked with concern. and took the opportunity to take away the talisman from the other party. Teacher, everything is fine. Li Lin only fainted for a while and recovered quickly. However, thinking about what you Bao just said, I always feel uneasy. There's nothing really wrong with his body, right? Originally there were 2 classes left in the afternoon. After much deliberation, he finally found another teacher to switch classes, and then hurried to the hospital. After getting the test results, Li Lin was stunned. End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 130. Chapter 130, Being Pampered as a Daughter. The report shows that he suffered from hair loss and headaches due to chronic heavy metal poisoning. Fortunately, his symptoms of poisoning were relatively mild. Be aware that the damage caused by heavy metals to the body is irreversible. It started with hair loss, and gradually progressed to memory loss, numbness in the limbs, and even kidney failure. Thinking of this, Li Lin couldn't help but feel lucky that he listened to Lu Yu's reminder, otherwise, the consequences would be disastrous. I didn't expect that girl to be so powerful and really know how to read faces. However, the girl also said that his recent misdeeds mean that his poisoning was not an accident, but someone maliciously poisoned him. Who is the one? He sat on the steps in front of the hospital and thought about everyone around him. He really couldn't think of anyone who would do this. Until the sun was about to go down, I slowly got up and walked towards the bus stop. As I was approaching the door of my house, my wife called, "Why haven't you come home so late?" Already arrived, Li Lin took out the key and opened the door. His wife had already cooked the meal and was setting the table. When she heard the voice, she turned around and smiled at him, "Wash your hands and eat." Li Lin usually cooks, and it is rare to see his wife cooking. Li Lin went into the kitchen to wash his hands, came out and sat down at the dining table. His wife handed him the rice. When he took it, he saw a red patch on the back of his wife's hand. He couldn't help but feel sad and said, "Thank you for your hard work. If I come back late next time, you can wait for me for a while, or order takeout." Hearing this, my wife couldn't help laughing and said, "It's rare for me to cook once, so it's hard work. However, I rarely cook, so don't dislike my craftsmanship. How could it be possible? As long as it is made by you, no matter how terrible it is, I will eat it all." "Okay, you really think my cooking is unpalatable?" the wife said angrily. No, I said the wrong thing," Li Lin coaxed with a smile. "I see you don't look good." "Did something happen during the meal?" the wife asked tentatively. Li Lin opened his mouth, but still did not tell his wife about his heavy metal poisoning. He smiled at her and said, "No, as you know, the school asked me to be in charge of the competition class. Maybe it's because I have been under too much pressure recently." Hearing this, the wife felt relieved and said, "Then you should also pay attention to rest." Good. Looking at my wife's beautiful face, she still looks the same as she did when we first met her in school, even though she has been married for many years. Li Lin was once again glad that he went to the hospital, otherwise he would have been left with a pampered wife who would not be able to take care of him at all. The two are college classmates and have been married for 7 or 8 years. The relationship between the couple has been very good in the past few years. The only regret is that they have no children. It's not that they can't have children, it's just that my wife is a dancer and she wants to stay in shape, so when they got married, they agreed not to have children for the time being. My wife is beautiful and is the beauty of their school. There were many people who pursued my wife, but in the end the wife chose me. Li Lin always felt that he was lucky. In addition, the two of them have no children, so they always treat their wife as a daughter. To be honest, when he reaches his age, he also wants to have his own children. Every time he saw other people's children, he was envious, but in order to support his wife's career, he could only silently transfer this love to his students. End of this chapter.